It was a cold morning. The sky was gray, and the wind was sharp. People rushed into the city bank, holding papers, bags, and phones. Everyone looked busy and important. Then, the door opened slowly. An old woman walked in. Her coat was long but worn out. It had patches on the sleeves and small tears near the bottom. Her shoes were simple, almost broken. She held a small brown purse close to her chest. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, and her face looked tired, as if life had not been kind to her. People in the bank looked at her. Some stared. Some whispered. A young couple near the entrance laughed quietly. A man in a suit shook his head and looked away. She didn't care. The woman walked to the queue and stood silently behind others. She didn't check her phone. She didn't look around. She just stood there, holding a small withdrawal slip in her hand. The paper was slightly crumpled, but her fingers held it with care, like it was something important. Minutes passed. One by one, the people before her left after finishing their work. Finally, it was her turn. She stepped forward. The teller was a young man with shiny hair and a fake smile. He looked at her coat first, then her shoes, then her face. "Yes," he said in a bored voice. She gave him the slip. Her hand didn't shake. Her eyes looked directly at him, calm and steady. He took the slip and typed something on his computer. After a few seconds, his eyebrows went up. He looked at the screen again, then back at the woman. Just a moment," he said. He checked the screen once more, then let out a small laugh, like he thought it was a joke. "This can't be right," he said louder now. "Ma'am, this account has too much money. We need the manager for this." People nearby heard him. A few turned to look. The man in the suit raised his eyebrows. The young couple started whispering again. The teller looked at her with disbelief. You're saying this is your account?" he asked, almost smiling. She didn't smile back. She simply nodded. "Please call the manager," she said in a calm voice. He pressed a button under his desk. A light blinked. After a few moments, the bank manager walked over. He was a tall man in his late 40s, wearing a blue tie and a badge with his name. He looked important. He also looked annoyed. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked the teller. "This lady," the teller said, almost laughing again, "wants to withdraw from an account that has, well, millions." The manager looked at the woman, then at her coat, then at her shoes, then back at the teller's screen. He typed quickly. He stopped. He stared at the screen. He looked confused. "This account," he said slowly, "is protected by multiple layers. It has a special owner ID. This account belongs to a VIP." He turned to the woman. "Do you have any ID with you?" he asked in a flat tone. She took out a simple ID card from her purse. It was old. The plastic had faded, but she handed it over without a word. He looked at it, then at the screen, then again at the woman. "This ID doesn't match the one in the system," he said sharply. "Sorry, ma'am, you must be mistaken. This can't be your account." The room felt quiet. The woman's face didn't change. She didn't argue. She didn't shout. She just stood there. People around began to whisper louder. Some took out their phones, pretending to check messages while secretly recording. The manager gave her back the ID card. "You may go now," he said, looking past her. The woman didn't move. She looked at the teller, then the manager, then around the bank. And then, very slowly, a small smile appeared on her face. But it wasn't a smile of kindness. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they know something others don't. She reached into her purse again. But this time, she didn't take out money. She took out a small black phone. Old, but clean. She pressed one button. The manager stared at the woman, confused. "What did you just say?" he asked, trying to stay calm. The woman didn't repeat herself. She simply placed the small black phone back into her purse. Her hands moved slowly, without fear. She looked peaceful, like someone who had already made her decision. People in the bank were watching more closely now. Even the security guards near the door were whispering to each other. The manager turned to the teller. "Check the account again," he said. The teller typed fast, his fingers shaking a little. "Sir," he said after a moment, "it's still the same. The account has over 90 million credits. That's more than the branch's total daily limit." The manager rubbed his forehead. "And her ID doesn't match." "No, sir," the teller said. "It looks old and doesn't have the same details as the VIP account." The manager faced the woman again. "Listen, madam," he said, louder now so others could hear. "We don't want any trouble, but you cannot claim an account that isn't yours." He folded his arms and spoke with fake politeness. "This account belongs to someone very important. Please leave before we call the authorities." The woman didn't move. Instead, she took a step forward. "I said," the manager began again, but she cut him off. "Do you always treat people like this?" she asked softly. "What do you mean?" he snapped. She looked around. "Do you always judge people by their clothes?" The manager laughed. "No offense, but yes. In places like this, appearance matters. Respect is earned, madam." The words echoed in the large, silent room. One of the customers standing nearby whispered, "Is she crazy?" Another chuckled, "She probably came to the wrong bank." The woman heard them all. She didn't blink. She looked directly into the manager's eyes and said, "You just made a very big mistake." Suddenly, all the computer screens in the bank froze. The lights flickered. The digital signs above the counters turned black. Then red letters appeared. "System override. Authority level. FOUNDR." People gasped. The staff looked at each other in shock. "What's happening?" The teller said, panic in his voice. The manager rushed behind the counter and tried to type on his computer. Nothing worked. Another screen flashed with a new message. "Access de guaranteed. Primary odor login." The security guards ran toward the woman, thinking she might be a threat. But before they could get close, a voice came from the overhead speaker. It was robotic, but clear. "Security alert canceled. Identity confirmed. Madam Evelyn Grace, sole owner of Horizon Federal Bank." The entire room froze. The manager turned white. The teller dropped his pen. Someone near the back whispered, "She owns the bank." The woman, Evelyn Grace, finally took off her old coat. Underneath, she wore a neat black blouse, simple but clean. Around her neck was a thin gold chain with a tiny key-shaped pendant. It sparkled under the bank lights. Evelyn stepped forward and said calmly, "I bought this bank 10 years ago." Quietly, piece by piece. The manager stuttered, "That's not possible." We would have known." She smiled. "No, you never looked. You only saw the surface. You only saw old clothes and cheap shoes." Her voice was calm, but strong. "I used to clean these floors, right here, years ago. You never noticed." Gasps filled the room. "I worked for minimum wage, saved every coin, started a small company, grew it, bought shares in this bank quietly under different names." She looked around the room. "Today, I walked in wearing my past, to see how my staff treats people who look poor." She turned to the teller. "You failed." Then to the manager. "You failed." They both looked down in shame. Evelyn walked to the center of the bank and spoke loudly so everyone could hear. "You should never judge someone by their coat or their shoes. Power doesn't always wear a suit." Some customers began clapping softly. The manager looked like he wanted the ground to open and swallow him. Evelyn pulled out her phone again and tapped a few buttons. The screens blinked. A message appeared on the main screen. "STAFFREVIE BGNNing INMEDIA Eloy." She looked at the people who had laughed at her earlier. "I forgive you," she said simply, "because you didn't know." She looked at the staff again. "But you did. You work in a bank. You deal with people's dreams, their money, their trust. And yet, you forgot the most basic rule." She walked slowly toward the door. The whole bank stayed silent as she passed. Before leaving, she looked back one last time. Her voice was soft, but every word cut deep. "You didn't refuse my withdrawal today. You refused my dignity." And with that, Evelyn Grace, owner of the entire bank, stepped out into the cold air. But this time, everyone was watching with respect in their eyes. Outside the bank, Evelyn Grace stood still for a moment. The cold wind touched her face, but she didn't feel it. Her eyes stayed on the tall glass building behind her, the same place where she was once invisible, where she was once treated like dirt. But today was different. Today, her silence spoke louder than 1,000 words. She took out her black phone again. Her fingers moved slowly, calmly, as if she had done this many times before. She opened a secure app and pressed one red button. The screen showed a message. Phase 1. Activated. Inside the bank, the silence had turned into quiet panic. The staff ran around trying to restart the frozen systems, but nothing worked. The manager was on the phone with the head office. His voice was shaky. "Sir, I don't know what's happening. Everything's locked." "Yes, her name is Evelyn Grace." "Wait, what do you mean she's the founder?" He hung up and looked like he had just seen a ghost. The teller, still sitting at his desk, whispered, "We'd just insulted the owner of the bank." All across the building, doors locked automatically. A voice from the speaker announced, "Emergency review in progress. All staff, remain in your positions." A black car stopped near Evelyn at the front of the bank. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Evelyn nodded at him but didn't enter. "I'm not done yet," she said softly. She walked back into the bank, slow and steady. No one stopped her now. Everyone stood frozen as she entered, like a queen walking into her palace. Her simple coat now looked like a crown. She walked up to the center of the hall, looked at the staff and said, "Gather everyone. Right now." The manager nodded quickly and ordered all employees to come to the lobby. Within minutes, the bank staff stood in a line. Security guards, tellers, cleaners, customer service officers, even the assistant manager. All had serious faces, some scared, some embarrassed. Evelyn looked at them one by one. Then she pointed to an older security guard at the back. "You," she said. He stepped forward slowly. "Yes, Mom. You greeted me with respect when I walked in. Do you remember?" He nodded. "Yes, Mom. My mother always said, never judge by looks." Evelyn smiled. "What's your name?" "Ramesh." She turned to her phone and typed something quickly. "Ramesh," she said, "you are now head of security, with triple your salary. Report to HQ tomorrow morning." Gasps filled the air. Ramesh stood in shock, his eyes wet. She turned to a young female cleaner standing near the wall. "You smiled at me and said good morning even when no one else did. Why?" The woman replied, "Because everyone deserves respect, Mom." Evelyn nodded again. "From now on, you'll work at our main branch as floor supervisor. Same pay for now, but bigger future. Well done." Tears rolled down the cleaner's cheeks. She whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much." Evelyn then turned toward the teller who had laughed at her. "You didn't just doubt me," she said, her voice calm but sharp. "You laughed. You assumed. You embarrassed me in public." The teller opened his mouth, but no words came out. "You are suspended, effective now. Review will decide your future." She didn't look at him again. Then came the manager's turn. He tried to speak first. "Ma'am, I was only doing my duty. We didn't know." She raised her hand. He stopped. "Exactly," she said. "You didn't know, because you never cared to find out. You saw my coat and decided who I was." She walked closer to him. When I was a cleaner, you stepped over my mop and never said sorry. When I was a shareholder, you ignored my emails. And today, you tried to erase my dignity in front of a crowd. She looked into his eyes. You are dismissed. Immediately. The manager collapsed into a chair, holding his head. Everyone watched, stunned. Then Evelyn turned toward the rest of the employees. I built this bank with trust and patience. I didn't want fame. I wanted honesty. But today, I saw pride, cruelty, and cold hearts. That ends now. She paused, then spoke slowly. From today, a new system will be followed. Every month, one person, chosen by me, will walk into this bank, dressed simply. You won't know who it is, but how you treat them will decide your future. People listened in silence. Some looked ashamed. Others looked inspired. Evelyn stepped back, looked around the hall one last time. After Evelyn left the bank, the air inside remained heavy. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The staff stood frozen, staring at the empty glass doors where she had disappeared just moments ago. It felt like time had stopped. But outside, Evelyn Grace was already walking down the busy street, her steps calm, her mind clear. Her driver followed quietly behind her, holding an umbrella above her head. The clouds were dark now. Light rain began to fall, but Evelyn didn't seem to notice. She had other things on her mind. She had more people to meet, more truths to reveal. The world only saw her as a rich businesswoman now, but few knew her full story. Few knew where she had come from and what she had survived. As her car drove away from the bank, Evelyn looked out the window. Her thoughts went far back to the cold nights when she had no home, back to the days when she walked for miles just to clean offices, including the very bank she now owned. She had eaten dry bread and slept on train benches. She had washed her clothes in public toilets. She had cried in silence when no one cared to ask if she was okay. But even in those dark days, she never gave up. She studied at night with borrowed books. She learned about money, about business, about power. Slowly, one small job after another, she climbed. She saved every coin. She invested in small companies, and she never forgot the people who treated her with kindness, or those who didn't. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was a video call. She answered. The face of a young woman appeared on the screen. Nervous, eyes red, voice shaking. Madam Grace, you told me to call if they fired me. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. They fired you. The woman nodded. Today. I stood up for an old man at our front desk. He didn't have proper documents, but he was so kind. The manager yelled at me and told me I was too soft. Evelyn's voice was calm, but strong. Which branch? Riverpoint. The woman replied. Evelyn typed something on her phone. You'll have a car pick you up in 20 minutes. From now on, you'll work with me directly. The woman gasped. Really? You did the right thing, Evelyn said. And I always protect the ones who protect others. The call ended. Evelyn sat back and closed her eyes. This was just the beginning. She didn't want to just own banks. She wanted to change them. To break the system that judged people by their clothes, their accents, their status. She had lived through that pain. Now she had the power to fix it. Meanwhile, back at the bank, rumors had started to spread. Some staff tried to delete messages and emails. Some called each other in panic, trying to cover their mistakes. But it was too late. Every message, every recording, every moment from that morning had already been uploaded to Evelyn's private server. She had always planned this day. For years. Not for revenge, but for justice. In a quiet village far away, an old man was watching the news on a small TV. He wore glasses, sat in a wooden chair, and sipped tea from a cracked cup. The news anchor said, "Breaking news. The founder of Horizon Federal Bank, long hidden from the public, has revealed herself today. Evelyn Grace, Once a cleaner, now the secret owner of one of the biggest banks in the country. The old man smiled. He looked at a photo on the wall, a much younger Evelyn standing next to him, holding a broom, smiling shyly. He whispered, "You did it, my child, just like you said you would." The rain outside got heavier, but Evelyn's story was just warming up. At her mansion, her team was already gathering. They had files, reports, and security footage. Evelyn walked into the grand hall and stood at the head of the long table. "Phase 2, she said. "We're not just cleaning one bank. We're cleaning the whole system." A young assistant raised her hand nervously. "Ma'am, should we go public now?" Evelyn paused, then smiled. "Not yet," she said. "First, I want the people who hurt others to feel what it's like to be powerless. Just for one day." The team nodded. Across the city, across the country, people were already hearing her name for the first time. News spread fast. It had been only 2 days since Evelyn Grace walked into the bank and changed everything. But now, her name was everywhere. People who once ignored her were now searching her story online. Some were shocked. Some were scared. Others were inspired. Social media was flooded with her name. Hashtag Evelyn Grace. Hashtag Honor in Disguise. Hashtag Respect Before Judgment. Many people, especially the poor and helpless, started calling her the Silent Queen. But while most were watching from the outside, something strange was happening behind closed doors. Far away, in a different city, a man named Victor Hale sat alone in a dark room. He was in his 50s, with sharp eyes and a cold face. On his desk were old documents, yellow with time. One paper had the words, "Loan denied. Applicant, Evelyn Grace." Victor stared at the paper, his hands shaking. "She's back," he whispered. After all these years, Victor had been a powerful banker once, the same man who had laughed in Evelyn's face when she begged for a loan to start her first small business. He had called her a waste of time, told her to clean the floors instead of dreaming about money. Now that same girl was richer than him, stronger than him, and worst of all, the world was cheering for her. Victor slammed the table. He couldn't let her rise without a fight. He picked up his phone and made a call. "I need every file on Evelyn Grace. Everything. Find me something that can bring her down." The voice on the other side asked, "You want us to destroy her?" "No," Victor replied, smiling bitterly. "I want the world to stop believing in her." Meanwhile, Evelyn sat in her study, reading letters from strangers. One letter was from a girl in a village who had been mocked at school for wearing torn shoes. After watching Evelyn's video, she walked into school the next day with her head high. Another letter came from a father who was denied a loan because of his job as a cleaner. He wrote, "You gave me hope again." Evelyn wiped a tear from her cheek. She didn't care for money anymore. She wanted to leave behind something bigger, a world where no one is judged by their clothes or job. Suddenly, her assistant rushed in. "Ma'am," she said, "there's someone at the gate. He says he knew you from the past." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "What's his name?" "Lucas," the assistant replied. "Lucas Arden." The name hit her like a wave. Lucas Arden, a name she hadn't heard in years. He was once her best friend. He had helped her study when she had no books, shared his lunch when she had no food. But one day, he disappeared. No note, no goodbye. Evelyn stood up slowly. "Bring him in," she said softly. Moments later, Lucas walked in. He looked older, tired, with sadness in his eyes. But his voice was still the same, gentle and kind. "Evelyn," he said, "I didn't know where else to go." She looked at him for a long time, her heart full of mixed feelings. "Why now?" she asked. "After all these years." Lucas lowered his eyes. "I was in trouble, Evelyn. Deep trouble. I couldn't protect you. And I couldn't protect myself. So I ran." Evelyn stayed silent. "I heard about you," Lucas continued. what you did, what you became. And I felt proud, but also ashamed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded photo. It was old and faded, a picture of young Evelyn and Lucas sitting on the pavement, laughing with ice cream in their hands. I kept this all these years, he said, because it reminded me that even the broken can become strong. Evelyn took the photo, her hands trembling. You helped me survive, she whispered. Lucas nodded. And now I want to help again, if you'll let me. She looked at him. The pain, the memories, the trust, it all came flooding back. I need people I can trust, she said, but I also need honesty. No lies, ever again. Lucas nodded. You have my word. Just then, her phone buzzed. A message popped up on the screen. QONFIDEN2IL. Victor Hale is gathering secret files against you. Prepare. Evelyn stared at the message. Victor Hale, the man who humiliated her all those years ago. Now he was coming for her name, her story, her truth. Evelyn stood tall. It's time, she said to Lucas. Time to face the past and finish what we started. Evelyn Grace stood by the window of her large office. The sky outside was turning gray, and thunder rumbled in the distance. But she wasn't afraid of storms. Not anymore. She had faced storms all her life, inside her heart, on the streets, and in the eyes of people who never believed in her. This was just another one, and she was ready. The message about Victor Hale's attack echoed in her mind. He was a powerful man once, cold, proud, and cruel. And now he wanted to destroy everything she had built, not with weapons, but with lies. Evelyn turned to Lucas, who now stood beside her once again. He won't fight fair, she said. I know, Lucas replied, but he won't win. Evelyn nodded. He will try to twist my past. He will dig into the old days, find my pain, my weakest moments. He'll turn them into headlines. Lucas looked at her. Then we tell the truth before he does. Your real story. The full story. That same night, Evelyn sat down with the camera crew. No fancy makeup, no designer clothes, just a plain white shirt and honest words. She looked into the camera and began. My name is Evelyn Grace. Many of you know me as the woman who walked into a bank and surprised the world. But that's not where my story begins. And then she told everything. About sleeping on benches, about cleaning the same banks that once rejected her, about the nights she went hungry, about losing her parents at a young age, about trying and failing, falling and rising again. She spoke for over an hour, her voice calm but full of emotion. She shared how she built her fortune, not through luck, but through long, hard years of work. She ended the video with one powerful line. I am not ashamed of where I came from. I wear my past like armor, and no lie can break it. Her team posted the video online at midnight. By morning, it had gone viral. Millions watched. People cried. People clapped. People said, finally, someone real. But Victor Hale was already on the move. He had paid news reporters to spread rumors. He said Evelyn faked her poor past, that she cheated her way to the top, that she used people and stepped on others to rise. He released blurry photos, old contracts, and twisted emails. But Evelyn didn't hide. She held a press conference. In front of cameras, reporters, and flashing lights, she stood strong. I am not perfect, she said, but I never lied to the world. I never cheated the poor. And I never forgot where I came from. If anyone has proof, let them bring it now. No one did. One by one, people who Victor paid to lie came forward and apologized. I was scared, one woman said on live TV. Victor told me I'd lose my job if I didn't speak against Evelyn, but I can't stay silent anymore. Truth began to win, but Victor wasn't done. He called a secret meeting with a group of powerful men. Some were rich businessmen, Some were old enemies of Evelyn who didn't want a woman like her to rise so high. "She's becoming a symbol," Victor said. "We must stop her, or others like her will rise." They'd made a plan to take over her bank from inside, using legal tricks and company rules. But Evelyn had expected this. In the early days of her journey, she had written a secret rule into the bank system. No major change can be made unless approved by the founder. And guess what? She still held that title. Evelyn walked into the boardroom where those powerful men were waiting. She placed the original documents on the table. "This bank," she said, "was built with every drop of pain I lived through. It doesn't belong to the rich. It belongs to the dreamers, the fighters, the forgotten ones." The men were silent. Some lowered their eyes. Some walked out quietly. And Victor, he stood up slowly. "This isn't over," he said coldly. Evelyn looked him in the eyes. "For you, it is." Later that evening, Evelyn met with Lucas in the garden behind her house. The air was calm now. The storm had passed. "You were brave today," Lucas said. Evelyn smiled gently. "I wasn't brave. I was just tired of hiding. People like us, we carry so many scars. But maybe it's time we show the world that scars aren't weakness. They are proof we survived." Lucas nodded. "What's next?" Evelyn looked up at the stars. "There's one last thing I need to do," she said. "Something that will change everything." The sun was rising over the city. Its warm light touched the glass windows of Evelyn Grace's office as she stood quietly, holding a small photo in her hand. It was the same photo Lucas had given her. Two children on a sidewalk, laughing over melting ice cream. So much had changed since then. But one thing stayed the same: her promise to never forget where she came from. The world now knew Evelyn not just as a bank owner, but as a symbol of strength, truth, and hope. She had faced lies, betrayal, and judgment, but she had answered all of it with dignity and truth. Victor Hale had disappeared from the public eye. His plans failed, his lies exposed. No one wanted to hear him anymore. But Evelyn didn't celebrate his fall. Instead, she focused on her next step, the biggest one yet. She called a press conference in the heart of the city. News channels arrived. Reporters filled the seats. People watched from buildings and sidewalks. Millions tuned in live. Evelyn walked up to the stage wearing the same old coat she had worn on the day she walked into the bank. The crowd noticed. They understood. This coat wasn't just clothing. It was history. It was her truth. She looked at the crowd and began. "I came into this bank with nothing but a withdrawal slip and a dream." That day, many people laughed. They saw only my coat, my shoes, and my silence. But they didn't see my story, my struggle, my strength. The crowd was silent, listening carefully. "Today, I stand before you not to talk about myself," she continued, "but about everyone who has been judged before being heard, everyone who has been told they are not enough, everyone who was laughed at before they even spoke." She paused, then said the words that would be remembered for years. "I am giving the bank away." Gasps filled the air. Reporters dropped their pens. People on the street froze. She raised her hand for silence. "Yes, I am giving it away," she said. "Not to the rich, not to politicians, but to a new group, made of the very people who have lived the struggle." She introduced the Grace Foundation, a new trust that would own the bank. It would be led by hard-working people, teachers, nurses, single mothers, former street vendors, cleaners, people who understood pain and patience. The bank would give small loans without judgment. No rich co-signers needed. No questions about expensive clothes. Just honest help and second chances. The crowd clapped loudly. Some cried. Others shouted her name. But Evelyn wasn't finished. "I'm also building a school," she said, "for children who can't pay. A place where no child will be laughed at for wearing a torn shirt. A place where dreams are respected." Lucas stood among the crowd, tears in his eyes. He wasn't just proud of Evelyn. He was proud to know that kindness and strength had won. Evelyn's voice softened as she spoke the final words. "I will step away from the spotlight now. But my message will stay. Judge less. Listen more. And always remember, the person in the old coat may be the one who changes everything." The crowd rose to their feet, a standing ovation. Weeks later, Evelyn moved into a small cottage near the mountains. She grew her own vegetables, walked in the forest, and spent her mornings writing letters to young women who reached out to her for advice. She no longer needed crowds or cameras. Her heart was full. Children now studied at the Evelyn Grace School, wearing donated uniforms and laughing freely. At the bank, people walked in without fear. Some carried muddy shoes. Others wore work clothes. No one laughed at them anymore. A cleaner once denied a loan was now a branch manager. A woman who had never been to college became the head of the loan approval board. The Grace Foundation continued to grow. It spread to other cities, helping thousands. And in the middle of it all stood one photo, framed in every branch. Evelyn in her old coat, smiling gently. Beneath it were her words. "Your story is not your shame. It is your strength." 1 year later, a young girl walked into the same bank where Evelyn's journey had begun. She wore a simple dress, carried a folder, and had hope in her eyes. The guard at the door smiled and opened the way. Inside, a poster of Evelyn looked down on her. The girl stopped, looked at it, and whispered, "Thank you." She didn't know Evelyn personally, but like many others, she didn't have to. Because Evelyn's legacy was no longer just about money, power, or success. It was about changing the world, one silent voice at a time. 1 year had passed since Evelyn Grace gave away her bank and changed thousands of lives. People still spoke her name with respect. Her story had become a lesson in schools. Her speech was shared on social media every day. She was called the woman who gave it all, and the queen in the old coat. But where was she now? Far from the noise of the city, in a quiet mountain village, Evelyn lived a peaceful life. Her home was small and simple. It had wooden walls, flower pots on the windowsill, and a garden filled with tomatoes and carrots. She didn't need more. She had already done enough. Each morning, she walked through the hills, carrying a notebook and a pen. She sat under a tree, wrote letters, poems, or thoughts about life. Sometimes, local kids visited her. They sat in a circle as she told them stories, real ones, with laughter and sadness, struggle and hope. She never asked for anything in return. She just listened, encouraged, and smiled. But fame has a way of finding you. One day, a car arrived at her gate. It was black and shiny. A man stepped out wearing a suit and dark glasses. Behind him was a young woman holding a camera. Evelyn opened the door herself. "Miss Grace," the man said, "we're from Global Hearts Media. We want to make a film about your life. It will be big, worldwide. Millions will watch it." The young woman smiled. "You're a living legend." Evelyn chuckled softly. "A legend," she said. "I'm just a woman who was once very hungry and very tired." The man laughed politely. "Yes, but your story can inspire more people. You can earn millions from this too." Evelyn looked at the flowers blooming in her garden. Then she said, gently, "I didn't build a story to sell it. I lived it to help others live theirs." The man looked confused. The young woman looked inspired. "I'll still be here," Evelyn said kindly, "if you want to talk, not film." They left quietly, and Evelyn returned to her garden. A few weeks later, Lucas visited her. He looked older now, with gray in his hair, but his smile was the same. "You turned down a movie offer?" he asked. "I turned down a performance," she replied. He laughed and sat beside her on the porch. "You know," Lucas said, "sometimes I wonder, if we never met on that sidewalk, would any of this have happened?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "Maybe not, But I think I would have still found a way. That's what pain does. It pushes you until you move. They sat quietly for a moment, watching the wind move the grass. Then Lucas asked something serious. What about the next generation, Evelyn? Who will carry your message forward? Evelyn looked toward the hills. There's a girl, she said. She writes to me every week. She lives in the city, lost her mother, works 2 jobs. But she still dreams. Lucas smiled. What's her name? Aria, Evelyn said. She reminds me of someone. Evelyn had already sent Aria a scholarship. But more than money, she gave her time. She mentored her through letters, phone calls, and video chats. Maybe, Evelyn said, Aria doesn't need to wear an old coat like I did. Maybe she can walk through the front door, proud, ready, without fear. Lucas stood and looked at her. You're building another Evelyn, he said. Evelyn smiled. No, I'm helping build a better one. 6 months later, at the Grace Foundation headquarters, a new leader was announced. It was Aria. She stood on the same stage where Evelyn once gave her final speech. She held Evelyn's photo in one hand and a notebook in the other, the same one Evelyn had used under the tree. I never met her in person, Aria said, but she changed my life. She made me believe that pain is not something to hide. It is something to build with. The crowd stood up and clapped. Aria was young, but her eyes were old, shaped by pain, grown by wisdom, and lit with Evelyn's fire. Back in the mountains, Evelyn sat with a radio beside her. She heard Aria's voice through the speakers. She didn't cry. She just smiled, deeply, fully, peacefully. The world was in good hands now. She had passed the torch. One last entry in her notebook. I was born without gold, diamonds, or a famous name. I was shaped by dust, hunger, and silence. And from them, I made something beautiful. I hope someone reading this will do the same. And when you do, pass it on, not as a story, but as a light.